Gondor. Where did it go wrong? It was going so well for the first 1,000 years of the Third Age and restoring some of that Númenórean prestige. Recently, I made a video on the Kin Strife, which was a bloody civil war fought in Gondor, where the king was briefly exiled and was a backward step for the civilization.
Today we are covering another tragedy of the second millennia that befell Gondor, and this added to the decline of Gondor that we then would see in the Lord of the Rings. What happened to the line of the kings? Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. This is Gone with Gandalf, and if we can just pretend that this is being uploaded on a Friday, and it is indeed a Friday, I do one of these videos every single Friday, or try to, and if you like this kind of content, then please do like the video.
A quick history check. The Kin Strife occurred in the 15th century of the Third Age, killing off many nobles of the royal house, members that were cousins of the king, thus could have carried a claim in the bloodline. In the 17th century though, there was the plague where the 26th king, 2 years into his reign, and his children perished, thus requiring the line to cross over to his nephew.
All while the Easterlings and the corsairs of Umbar have 1, 2, 3, 4 major excursions into Gondor's lands where more kings fall. Eventually, you're just going to run out of people who have a claim.
Meanwhile, in the north, Arnor has been in the midst of a losing war against the Witch King of Angmar for centuries, yet they still hold the most prominent land of Arthedain, centred on Fornost, which is nearby to the ancient capital of Eärnur. Ever since Isildur left Gondor for his journey home, the two kingdoms weren't so close politically speaking. They had two separate lines for the crown now, and Gondor had proven to be the mightier of the two. Still, in 1940 of the Third Age, the 31st king of Gondor under her had his daughter wed Arvedwi, heir to the kingship of Arthedain, thus joining the two kingdoms once more in blood.
This will be important later on, much later on, but I bring this up because it is important to understand why Gondor sailed north to help in the fight against Angmar in 1975 of the Third Age. Oh, but Onderher did get killed by the Easterlings 4 years later. And his sons. Whoops.
But yes, some years passed and Gondor was sent word from the north that they were in dire need of help, else Fornost would fall. Following this newly awakened bond though, the now 32nd king of Gondor, Eärnur II, sent a force led by his son Eärnur to help. Well, Fornost fell and Arnor was no more, but the army of Gondor would arrive a year after the fact in 1975 of the Third Age, successfully erasing all of the evil of the Witch King in the north. This was significant because it shows just how massive Gondor's army was in this period. Their fleet filled the havens of Mithlond, Harlond and Forlond of the elves.
This is just a much greater force than had really ever been seen up in the north, ever since really the last alliance of elves and men, which was just kind of forming in this area. And yet, this is just a small expedition by the standards of Gondor, alluding to just how far Gondor would yet still decline over the course of the next 1,000 years as we reach the timeline of the Lord of the Rings, where you have Prince Imrahil kind of mocking the number that could be mustered by the captains of the West to then march for the Black Gate. Even in defeat though, the Lord of the Nazgul sowed the seeds of his revenge by shaming the prince. The Witch King charged headlong at Eärnur, and whilst the man may have stood, his horse did not. This was hilarious to the Wraith and infuriating for the prince, birthing a need for revenge for the heir to the throne, and well, if you think this is going to end well, then you haven't been paying attention.
Eärnur would become the 33rd king of Gondor in 2043 and the last of the line of Anarion. Following the seizure of Minas Ithil in 2002 Third Age, the Witch King had taken abode there, and now that his old adversary was king, he sent 2 separate offers of challenge, knowing full well that Eärnur would not be able to resist the urge for retribution. I read somewhere that Eärnur was the greatest warrior in all of the land and practiced skill in arms more than anyone really should. I'll pop that somewhere up on the screen if that is true.
Of course, the new king went headlong, galloping into the Morgul Vale after the second challenge was issued. He probably thought he'd do all right, but, you know, he was never seen again and the line of kings was broken.
So that there is another bloodline gone. Who was next? There is none. They've all died. There may have been a descendant, but due to the lessons learned of the Kin Strife, no one would wish to risk picking an unsuitable candidate again. For that reason, the stewards became the ruling figure in Gondor, a caretaker of the throne in case Eärnur might trot out from the jaws of death. This was still a hereditary role from the line of Húrin onwards, and, well, he was a top bloke of Númenórean heritage, not of the line of Elendil though, and he lived in the 17th century.
It was only made hereditary from Steward Pellander onwards, and their ancestral seat was Arnor, which was in Ithilien, if you are interested. Of course, Denethor, Faramir and Boromir, they were all of this ancient line, and indeed, Arnor is actually then where Faramir would end up taking up residence in the Fourth Age. Now, I do have a video which I made last year as to why Gondor had no king for 1,000 years, so I'm trying to not repeat myself overly, so if you want to check that out you can. But Steward Pellander was, he was one of the key reasons as to why that happened. Of course, what I said earlier of the line of kings dying out, that was a little bit of a fib. I'm sorry, I'm just a really cheeky guy, I suppose.
Arnor. Doesn't really matter how you want to say it. He was not a king though, as his father lost the kingdom in the war against the Witch King, and instead became the first in the line of the chieftains of the Dunedain.
It does then beg the question, why was he not invited to become the king in the Southern Kingdom? Well, to put it succinctly, and again not to repeat myself from that previous video, politics.
Hence, Gondor lost a leading light, and whilst it didn't immediately cause her to collapse, it was a significant symbolic loss to follow the recent hardships in this period. What with the abandonment of Osgiliath, withering of the Tree of Kings, fall of Minas Ithil, and the loss of a most ancient ally in the north.
It just draws a more desperate picture, something that's a little more familiar to us if we just read or watched The Lord of the Rings for the first time. Suffering continuous Pyrrhic victories and kind of having to rise again from the ashes, that's going to cause some damage, long-term damage, and this erosion of the foundations of the state, well, that can't really be repaired overnight, and it is not something that would happen until the return of the king. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, then feel free to pop them down in the comments below. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I'm going Gandalf. Good day.